I used to waste time on the dark web, not for anything serious, mostly out of boredom. I'd click through old forums, dig into threads no one had touched in years. Most of it was junk. Scam sites, broken marketplaces, people pretending to be hitmen. Sometimes I'd find weird stuff, but it never felt real. Just stories people made up to scare each other. But one night something was different. It was late. I was half asleep, just clicking around. I don't even remember what site I was on. The layout was plain, like a stripped-down message board. I was scrolling through thread titles when one stopped me cold. How to cook a live woman. It wasn't bolded or highlighted. It just sat there in the middle of the list, like it was any other post. I stared at it for a few seconds. At first I thought it had to be a joke, some shock post or trolling nonsense. But something about it felt off. The title wasn't trying to be funny or dramatic. It was written like a how-to guide. I hesitated. My first instinct was to scroll past it, but I clicked. Just one click, that's all it took. The page loaded instantly. No images, just text. Simple, clean formatting. It looked like a recipe. Step-by-step instructions. But instead of food, it described a human body. How to prepare it. How to clean and season properly. Which parts take longer to cook. What internal temperature different organs break down at. I felt my stomach turn. It was written so calmly. No shock value. No swearing. No threats. Just instructions. Like it was completely normal. I kept reading. My eyes kept moving even though I didn't want them to. There were tips on how to keep the subject alive during the process, timing notes, tables, even advice on keeping noise down. It was sickening, but the worst part was how logical it all sounded. Like someone had done this before, like someone had tested it. I should have stopped reading. I should have closed the tab and walked away, but I didn't. I scrolled to the bottom of the post. There were comments, not many, maybe 6 or 7, but they weren't jokes or people calling it fake. They were serious. Someone had replied with their own version of the recipe. Another user asked a question about skin elasticity at high heat. Someone else mentioned trying smaller cuts before moving on to full-size bodies. It felt like I was reading a cooking forum, except nothing about it was normal. I clicked on the profile of the original poster. Their username was just a random string of letters and numbers. No avatar, no bio, but there was a file link under their account. One folder, no password. I don't know why I clicked it. Curiosity, maybe. Some part of me still thought it was a prank. I downloaded it. The folder had 3 files, a PDF, a notepad document, and a zip file labeled proof, bold. I opened the PDF first. It was worse than the forum post. It had diagrams, hand-drawn, scanned images with labels on muscles and nerves. Each one matched the steps from the post. The notepad file had notes, short lines like heat causes early vocal cord failure, adjust temp or start with limbs, keep subject conscious longer. It read like someone's personal testing log. There were dates, some notes crossed out and rewritten. This wasn't a copy-paste job. Someone put time into this. I hesitated before opening the zip file. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe more drawings, maybe nothing. But it wasn't that. Inside were photos, low quality, dim lighting, grainy, but they looked real. They showed a table, plastic sheets on the floor, metal tools. I only looked at the first 2 before I closed it. My mouth went dry. I couldn't breathe properly. I sat there staring at the screen, trying to convince myself it was fake, but I couldn't. It looked real, too real. I started to feel sick. I unplugged the hard drive and walked away from the desk, but it was already too late. Something about that moment stuck in my head. Something told me I'd made a mistake I couldn't undo. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, those images came back. Not just the photos, the way everything was written, the calm tone, the planning. I kept thinking, what if it was real? And if it was real, then who made that post? Who else had seen it? I felt like I had crossed a line I shouldn't have. I tried to brush it off the next day, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Later that night, I turned my computer back on. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to delete the files properly. Maybe I just wanted to check if the post was still there. Not just the photos, the way everything was written, the calm tone, the planning. I kept thinking, what if it was real? And if it was real, then who made that post? Who else had seen it? I felt like I had crossed a line I shouldn't have. I tried to brush it off the next day, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Later that night, I turned my computer back on. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to delete the files properly. Maybe I just wanted to check if the post was still there. It was fresh, posted seconds ago. The title was simple: "He's watching us too." I clicked it. Inside there was one message. It had my IP address. I stared at it for a long time. No other text, just the numbers. That was enough. I shut everything down, disconnected the router, pulled the cables out of the wall. Then I took the hard drive outside and smashed it with a hammer. I didn't stop until it was in pieces. I wiped my phone, reset my laptop, even changed my internet provider. But I still don't feel safe. Every now and then I get strange emails. Empty messages from random addresses. Nothing in them, no subject, no attachments, just blank space. I don't reply. I don't click. I don't want to know who's sending them. That thread was up for maybe a few hours, and it changed how I look at everything. Some things online don't want attention. Some threads aren't meant to be read. I clicked one, just one, and it followed me home. I was looking through an old archives section of a darknet forum, the kind of place people don't really talk about, not the popular marketplaces or fake hitman sites, but the dead zones, places that haven't been updated in years, full of broken links and abandoned threads. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just wasting time. I've always had this habit of going too deep, following links that lead nowhere, reading stuff I probably shouldn't. That night, I clicked on a subforum with a plain title, Advanced Processing Techniques. I thought it was about meat, legitimately. Maybe some butcher-level stuff, or black market organ sales. The first thread in that section was called How to Skin a Human Properly. No caps lock, no shock emojis, nothing attention-grabbing, just that title. It looked like any other old post. I stared at it for a bit, thinking it was just someone trying to be edgy. I clicked it anyway. It opened to a long wall of text. No images, no intro, just instructions, line after line of cold, technical writing. It started with tool preparation, the kind of knives required, how to sharpen them to avoid tearing the material, what kind of grip to use to avoid accidental damage. Then it moved on to body positioning, stress points on the skin, temperature considerations to keep elasticity stable. I remember that line clearly. Keep elasticity stable. I kept scrolling. It explained how to make the first incision, where to start, how to pull the skin without cutting too deep, how to avoid leaving marks on the underlying fat. It sounded like a surgical manual. The tone was flat. No emotion, no drama, just process, steps, clean technique. I stopped halfway through when I reached the section titled Maintaining Consciousness. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about anatomy. This was meant to be done while the person was still alive. I wanted to close the tab right then, but I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe I was frozen. Maybe I wanted to know how far it would go. I scrolled past the section on keeping someone alive. It talked about sedatives, not strong ones, just enough to keep the body still without dulling nerve response. There were notes about breathing patterns, how to stop someone from passing out, how to manage blood loss without disrupting the skin. It wasn't some messy torture fantasy. It was exact, technical, written by someone who had done this before. Further down it mentioned disposal, how to treat the skin after removal, how to clean and preserve it. There were even instructions on how to cure it, using basic household chemicals, turning it into a kind of leather. The process was slow, detailed, disgusting, but it was practical. That was the part that messed with me most. It wasn't chaos, it was method. At the bottom of the post, there were attachments. No warnings, just file names like ref notes viv2, example layout, real result.jpg. I stared at the last one. I told myself not to open it, but my hand moved on its own. I clicked. The image loaded slowly. At first it just looked like a stretched sheet, pale, thin, uneven edges. Then I noticed the shape, the outlines. You could see the face, not the features, just the skin, flattened and nailed into a wooden frame. The caption under it said clean extraction, full body, no tears. I closed the file, sat back in my chair. My palms were wet. My stomach felt hollow. I opened the profile of the person who made the post. They'd been active a few days ago. Dozens of posts. Most of them had similar titles. Removal efficiency techniques, skull cleaning without breaking facial structure. It wasn't just one thread. It was a series, a full guide. That was the moment I realized this wasn't some old forgotten thread. This was still active, still growing, and I had just stepped right into the middle of it. I shut everything down. I didn't even bother bookmarking anything. I just wanted it off my screen, but it stayed in my head. The tone of the post, the details, that image. It didn't feel like fiction. It felt like documentation. A manual written by someone who'd done it more than once and didn't see anything wrong with it. A few hours later, I checked my downloads folder. I'd forgotten that the PDF had auto-saved when I clicked it earlier. I deleted it right away, but for some reason the file came back after a restart. Same name, same file size. I deleted it again. Same thing happened the next day. I ran a scan. Nothing showed up. I wiped the folder, cleared everything, reset the browser. It still came back. Then the messages started. Not emails, not anything public, just small notes popping up on my terminal, like someone was inside my system. The first one said, "Not clean enough." The next one came a day later. "There's more to learn." I unplugged the machine and tossed the hard drive. Thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 nights later, I got a package. No name, no return address, just a small envelope. Inside was a printed photo, the same image I'd seen on that thread. The full skin, nailed down, framed, but this time there was something different. Written on the back, in small handwriting, "Precision matters." That was the last straw. I moved, changed numbers, changed everything. I don't go near darknet sites anymore. I don't even use Tor, but sometimes when I wake up at night, I feel like someone's watching. I check the door, the windows, the cameras, all clear. But I still feel it, like I'm being measured, studied. That thread wasn't just instructions. It was an invitation, quiet, open, waiting for anyone curious enough to click. I did, and now I don't think I'll ever really be left alone again. I was looking through a hidden archive one night, one of those old forgotten corners of the dark web. No search bar, no categories, just a list of threads in plain text. Most of the content was dead, broken links, empty posts, nonsense spam. But there was one title that stood out. No emoji, no bait, just quiet, specific words. How to remove a face without damaging the skull. I paused for a moment. I assumed it was clickbait or some edgy troll post. Still, my curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. The thread was short at first glance, just a few paragraphs of text. But the language wasn't casual. It wasn't shock content. It was clean, direct, clinical. The post started by outlining the tools needed. Not just any tools, but exact models. Surgical scalpels with blade types, handle sizes, even grip techniques. It described how to make the first cuts behind the ears and along the hairline to avoid tearing the dermis. I remember one line clearly. Preservation of the nasal structure begins with subcutaneous detachment. Start slow, pull downward, never rush. It sounded like something from a surgical textbook, but twisted. The goal wasn't to save a person. It was to remove their face like peeling off a mask. while keeping the bone underneath untouched. As I scrolled down, it got worse. There were diagrams, not high quality, just simple, hand-drawn outlines of the cuts. A rough map of how to lift the skin without cracking the orbital bone or damaging the jaw. There were small notes scribbled next to each section. Reminders, warnings, adjustments based on age or skin thickness. The post ended with a short comment from the original user. If done properly, the skull should remain completely intact. Practice makes precision. I sat there staring at the screen, unsure what to think. It wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was just calm, focused, like it came from someone who had done it before. Not just once, more than once. I thought that was it, just a weird old thread from some unhinged user. But below the post there were attachments, 3 files. I stared at the names: Technique Comparison.txt, Sample Set, PDF, and 1 image file, Result1.jpg. I didn't want to open them, but I did. The text file was first. It was short, maybe a page and a half. A list of methods with notes beside each one. Blade angle variations, incision sequence testing, skin resistance feedback. There were columns marked clean, partial tear, and bone exposure. It looked like a lab report, not a forum post. Someone had documented results from multiple attempts, like they were studying it, refining it. Then I opened a PDF. That one hit harder. It was a series of scanned notes and sketches, hand-drawn again, with tiny writing crammed into the margins. One page broke down the ear detachment process in detail. Another showed how to cut around the mouth without damaging the lips. There were marks for tension points, skin stretch angles, even measurements for how far to pull before cutting deeper. I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't a joke. Someone put serious time into this. The last file was the image. I clicked it, expecting it to be low resolution or fake, but it wasn't. It was sharp enough. It showed a human skull, stripped clean, the full face removed and laid out beside it like a sheet. The skin was intact. You could see everything. The mouth, the eyelids, the contours. It was real, or at least it looked real enough that I didn't want to look any longer. I sat back in my chair. My hands were sweating. My first thought was, who does this? My second thought was worse. How many times have they done it? I checked the user's profile. Dozens of posts, all with titles like efficient rib separation, soft tissue preservation notes, full extraction without breaking teeth. It wasn't just one post. It was a full catalog. And I was starting to think these weren't just theories. I closed the window and unplugged the computer. I couldn't look at it anymore. I sat there in silence, trying to push the image out of my head. But it was stuck. The face on the table, the clean skull, the way it was all arranged, not rushed, not messy, just precise. That was what made it worse. It wasn't rage or chaos. It was order. Later that night, I started wondering how many others had seen that post. It had no replies, no engagement. It had just been sitting there, hidden, unnoticed. But someone had uploaded those files recently. Someone was still active. I checked again the next day. The thread was gone. The user profile too, scrubbed completely. Nothing in the cache, nothing in the archive. That's when I started noticing strange things. My system acted weird. Short delays, background processes I didn't start. A file appeared on my desktop one morning. Just a plain text file named youreadwell.txt. Inside was a single line: clean technique is hard to find. I deleted it instantly, disconnected everything, reinstalled my system from scratch. I still don't know how it got there. A week later, a package showed up. No return address, no tracking, just a padded envelope. I opened it. Inside was a USB stick. I didn't plug it in. I burned it in the sink. Since then, I've kept things offline. No dark web, no hidden forums, nothing encrypted. But I still feel it. Like someone saw me reading that thread and marked me. Like I got too close to something that wasn't supposed to be public. I've changed my number, swapped machines, reset everything I can. but sometimes I still get blank calls. No sound, just dead air. Other times I swear I hear faint breathing on the line. I don't know who wrote that post. I don't want to know, but I think someone wanted it found. Not by everyone, just by people who look too long in the wrong places. People like me. I haven't gone back, but I don't think it matters. Some things follow you anyway.